Hello, this is Inga, and I'm going to be making Victorian recipes for 24 hours today. I've really actually always been very fascinated by recipes from the Victorian era. Coincidentally, I've also been a huge fan of the Victorian Way series on the English Heritage channel. It basically involves Mrs. Avis Crocombe teaching us about how she kind of develops these recipes, and the best part is she did actually exist a little over a century ago. Those recipes are like legit. English Heritage has gone ahead to put a bunch of her recipes into this book. Again, as you can see, I have looked through and kind of picked out the ones that I really wanted to try the most. Also, they have adapted these recipes for us to be able to cook them using a more modern approach since a lot of traditional tools are no longer accessible to us. There's a lot of stuff in here that is not things that you would normally find in your average grocery store. I think I'll have to go to a bunch of different specialty grocery stores. So I'll see you when I have all the ingredients ready. So it is morning time. I'm ready to make some breakfast, even though I'm pretty sure I woke up later than the maids usually do at the house. So Mrs. Crocombe would probably be really mad at me if I was actually an employee. But here I am, ready to make some food. Okay, so for breakfast today, a lot of you know that I think breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but apparently back then it wasn't so. Even though Mrs. Crocombe did say in a video that sometimes the family would not have lunch until 4 p.m., so they did need to have a hearty breakfast. But I think that was also like something only for the privileged. I will be making Kedgeree for breakfast today, and Kedgeree is actually a rice dish that has Indian origins in the form of khichdi, which is originally a mixture of lentils, rice, onions, and spices. The British adaptation of it was to add fish and to drop the lentils. It just looked really good. It has a lot of seafood in it. It has a lot of rice. It has eggs. It doesn't have a lot of veggies, but just looks like something I would really enjoy. Here's some of the stuff I have. I have some cayenne pepper here, a bunch of parsley, an egg, a piece of cod here, and I have these quail eggs. Took me a while to find these. I had to go to, I think, the Italian grocery store actually, and was really relieved when I was able to finally source it. These two will be used for decoration. Over here, I also have some shrimp, a little bit of heavy cream, and this is leftover rice from my dinner yesterday. Honestly, looking at all the stuff here, I feel like I'm about to make fried rice because of, you know, the rice, the eggs, and a little bit of protein. Oh, and then there's also butter, which I'm going to grab from the fridge. But first things first, I'm going to prep some of these things. So I'm going to go ahead and cook my quail eggs, get some water boiling over on the stovetop. Just going to wash these really quickly. Just going to carefully lower these in. Eggs are in. Now we're going to get to cooking the fish. Over here, I'm gonna put my cod here, and I'm gonna take it over to this side. Yes, I am using my oven. I am going to get my rice mixture ready now. Just cracking an egg directly into the cream. Now I'm just going to whisk it up. Make sure it's mixed well. This is the part that makes me feel like it's more like a risotto than a fried rice, since we never use cream. Here I'm just going to real quickly chop up my parsley. This is for decoration. Okay, it's been a couple of minutes. My fish has now been cooked. I also just used a fork to kind of fluff it up and break it up into little pieces. I also have little bits of cooked shrimp in here. My quail eggs are also here sitting in an ice bath so I can deshell them. I'm gonna start heating this pan up now, and we're going to fry the rice up. First thing I'm doing is tossing the butter in. Let's see, where's my book? Let me go get my book. Just good to have a reference by your side. Next thing is to put put in the rice. Just spread it out a little bit. I'm gonna turn on the vents. It's gonna be a little loud. I'm gonna add in a little bit of cayenne pepper now. Oh my gosh, maybe I put a little too much, but you know what? There's only one spice in here, not including salt and pepper, so that's where I'll be getting most of my flavor, I guess. A little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. Now there's a little bit of color in here. I know Mrs. Crocombe also said that we could add a little bit of turmeric or mustard powder if we wanted it to have more color, but I think adding the eggs should make it okay. Honestly, this alone I feel like I could already eat. Now I can mix in my egg cream mixture. That's a lot of cream. Then we're just going to fold it gently. This is the part where I was like, it feels more like risotto. We're supposed to cook very gently until it starts to coagulate. I mean, I feel like it's already coagulating, but oh, but see now the color is a little more yellow. It looks more like porridge than anything right now. I'm a little nervous, but I'm gonna go ahead and add in the fish now. Here's that pave few. Gently fold that in. Also, I tasted the fish. Honestly, the cod was pretty salty on its own, so I feel like we should be okay. Ooh, but it smells good. I feel like the consistency looks about right. This is now done, so I'm gonna go ahead and plate it up. Ready for breakfast. Here we are, my Kedgeree. I really just tried to do it the way they did it in the book, and I kind of love the idea of like just putting little quail eggs and shrimp to the side. I am also very curious about this consistency here because obviously I'm very familiar with rice, but this is supposed to be very creamy and porridge-like. Look at that. All right. Pretty good. I was a little bit worried just because normally I do add a lot more spices to my rice dishes or noodle dishes, but I think for this one, because of the cod, you do get a little bit of that umami, and I did put quite a bit of cod in it. Kedgeree apparently is also something you can also eat cold, which I did not know that. Aside from the fact that there aren't too many vegetables, I would say it's like decently nutritious. I just made some Earl Grey tea. It's the most British tea I have at home. They did mention that you could actually use smoked fish with this. I feel like that would have added even more flavor, so I'm excited to try that next time. But this is probably something I would want to try again, so pleasant surprise. We have breakfast out of the way. I'm gonna slowly enjoy this, enjoy the beautiful morning outside, and then we'll get ready for lunch. All right, it is lunchtime and I am back in the kitchen and I'm ready to make some soup. Specifically, I wanna be making some rhubarb soup. I've actually never worked with this before. I found the ones that were a beautiful red because apparently the redder my rhubarb is, the redder my soup will be. Even though rhubarb is technically a vegetable, a lot of people treat it as a fruit. You see it a lot more in desserts. Here's what else I have. Some butter, just half an onion, a tomato, 2 rashers of bacon. That's what it said in the book, rashers. I had to look up what that meant. It just meant 2 strips of bacon. Some beef stock over here. Then I also have some bread, which I'll use to thicken the soup as well as to make croutons. As somebody who hasn't really experimented with rhubarb, I'm just really interested in seeing how it pans out. Just real quickly, going to chop these up into little pieces. It's almost like celery, honestly. Also going to chop up my tomatoes, also my onions, and of course, my bacon. This is where all the flavor comes. And then because it is specified that we want the slice of bread without the edges, I'm just going to give it a good trim, I guess. I thought it was funny actually that she said you can also add corn flour if you want, but apparently it is more wholesome to put a whole slice of bread. So we're going for wholesome today, everybody. I can eat this stuff. All right, I think I have everything I need. We can start cooking the soup. Got my book here, have my pot here, and we are going to start by adding in some butter. This is going to be a time-intensive recipe since it is a soup, so it will need to be reduced, and we're gonna have to wait for everything to soften. First up, we have to fry up the bacon and wait for this butter to melt. Slowly but surely. Butter is melted, so I'm gonna go ahead and add in the bacon. This is some good bacon. I feel like I'm making carbonara. All right, it is getting slightly brown over here, so time to add in the onions. I thought it was really interesting about what Mrs. Crocombe said in her video about how onions were apparently not a popular thing to have in wealthy families. I don't know how I would have survived. I love onions. I'm just going to cook this for around 20 minutes now. So that's the first process, and then we'll check back in after that. All right, it's been a while, and as you can see, there is a lot more color going on here. But now I can add in the rest of my vegetables and fruit, since tomato is a fruit, I guess. Inga my tomatoes and my rhubarb. Also going to add in my beef stock. Add a little bit more since I don't think I measured enough. I mean, it's already looking like soup. Here's the best part. Add in my wholesome bread. Just dunk it in, let it soak up the goodness. So now I'm just going to bring this to a boil. Once it starts boiling, I'm gonna cover it up and let it simmer for around like half an hour more. But in the meantime, I'm gonna get started on my sippets, which is what Mrs. Crocombe called croutons. We're supposed to cut the crust, which breaks my heart a little bit because the crusts are actually my favorite part. You should cut them into little triangles. I think scissors is the best way to make it the most exact. So this is how I can get that perfect triangle. I have my bread here. I already have it buttered up, so I'm just going to, essentially I'm just toasting them on the pan. I feel like I'd snack on these anyway, so I'm just gonna make more than I probably need. Going to flip these when they're golden, and then hopefully the timing should be just about right for when my soup is done. Soup is now pretty much cooked throughout. It's not done because I have to blend it together, but let's take a look. Ta-da! I know it doesn't look too exciting, but it smells nice. It smells like beef and vegetable soup, honestly. You can see that the bread has pretty much completely disintegrated. Well, there's like little chunks there, but give it a good stir. All right, I'm going to scoop this out and we're gonna blend it up in a sec. I knew that was gonna happen at some point. I am going to season it now, and then I'm going to serve it up. Oh my gosh, I like got soup all over my hand. All right, lunch in just a second. And here I am with my rhubarb soup. I will say it's a lot less chunky because I ran it through a sieve. It smells more like bacon and onion than anything else. Oh wow, okay. It is very tart, which is definitely from the rhubarb. Like, I definitely get the notes of like the beef stock and the caramelized sort of onion and bacon fat, but there is an underlying sweetness. It's just that I think when you take a sip, it's the sour tanginess that hits you first. So after a while, I think when it mellows out, it's like a very pleasant aftertaste. But I'm going to try it with the crouton here. This one has been soaking up for a while, but let me try this. So the croutons I made were with sourdough, which is also sour. So combined with the tartness of the rhubarb, this is a little like, you know, it's like a wake-up call right now. But let me try it with one of these unsouped sippets. when it hasn't soaked up so much, I think it actually helps. I think if I were to make this again, I'd probably put a little less rhubarb or just find a way to better balance it, maybe add a little bit of sugar. I'm going to slowly sip at this, probably gonna get some water too. And then I will see you guys when I prepare dinner. Hello, it has not been too long after lunch, but because dinner is going to take some time to cook, I'm going to get started actually like right about now. So for dinner, I wanted to make pie. I think because when I think of English food, the first thing that comes to mind, most probably because when I was in the UK, I felt like pie was the staple at most pubs. So pie it is, and it so happens that in this cookbook, there are some pies. Devonshire squab pie. Squab apparently means young pigeon, but this squab pie does not actually use any pigeon, which is very confusing. Instead, it uses mutton and apples, and we'll see how it goes. Speaking of ingredients, here's what I have. Again, we only have a few ingredients, namely we have the mutton. I have some finely diced onion that I've already cut up beforehand, and some beef stock, as well as 2 apples that I've already peeled and cored, and a little bit of butter. The reason I wanted to get mutton instead of lamb was because, well, one, the recipe specified it, but also because mutton is leaner than lamb and it also picks up flavors better, supposedly. So I looked for a while before I found these, and unfortunately I could not find the boneless mutton neck cutlets. These ones are bone-in. But other than that, I also got these really nice apples. These are Ruby Frost apples that I actually personally really like. But another fun fact is that Britain is the only country that differentiates between culinary apples and dessert apples. So one for eating and one for baking. I mean, I feel like for us, it's maybe like Granny Smith would be like the baking apple. All right, so first thing I'm gonna do now is basically just thinly slice my apples before we start pan frying the mutton. So apples are ready to go. Now to pan fry these up. All right, use tongs. Pan is heating. Gonna go ahead and just go right for it. Woohoo! To give them some color. Wow, this is a full pan. Just let that cook. We're not supposed to season it until it's in the pie. Just a little more, and then this should be brown, I think. But meanwhile, I'm going to go butter up my pie pan over here. I'm just going to start layering it up. That's all there is to it. I'm just going to start with a bottom layer. You know, they're doing double layers, but like, I probably needed like a deeper pie dish. Oops. Now I'm going to heavily salt it. I'm putting a lot of pepper because it does specify in the recipe that mutton needs to be peppered heavily. Now I'm going to add in the onions, apples. The last thing I'm going to do is just add in the broth. Because this is just the sort of initial cooking process, I am going to now wrap it in foil tightly. You want it completely sealed, 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and I'm just going to now toss it in. Oh, it's hot, 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 hot. And this is going to cook for 1.5 hours. That's why we're starting early. Okay. In the meantime, I might have to cook a few things for dessert, but until then. The mutton and apples are almost done cooking. I have been spending the past 1 hour doing just like prep for dessert, but here I am now getting ready to roll out some puff pastry. Just need to make sure it's big enough to cover the entire pie, and also we're gonna cut out some shapes. All right, we'll just bring the pie over. Ooh, okay, looking cooked. It's okay if there's a tear because we're going to have to cut it open anyways. All right, I'm just going to trim the sides and then I'll use those little bits to make something. Let's do this real quick. See if we can cut some designs on here. They didn't specify where, so I'm just going to do whatever feels good here as well because I don't have the little vent thing. I'm just gonna do some flowers for the heck of it. Why not? Last thing I need to do is just do a little brush on top to give it that color before we pop it back in the oven. It's all going good, y'all. All right, bye. I am going to make a drink for myself because I need a drink because I'm so exhausted. Yeah, so I'm gonna make a gin punch, which is also from the book. It says here that it was based on references in the novels of Charles Dickens. It looks really good actually. It has lemon, sugar, honey, and cinnamon, nutmeg. Apparently this drink used to be mixed at the table in a male-only ritual, generally ending in disarray or at celebrations. I am going to break the norm here, I guess, and make it for myself. I already have some lemon in here. I'm gonna go ahead and add in a little bit of sweetening. This might like give me like a sugar high or something. Sugar, also a bit of honey. Oh yeah, that's nice. You know what? I'm going to add in this pumpkin spice because it literally has cinnamon, ginger, cloves, and nutmeg, which is perfect. So a generous pinch. Gosh, that's like very generous. Okay, I have some gin here. I'm not going crazy. I promise this is the actual measurement. All right, gin in. Now for the brandy. Great. Hot water to top it off. Here we go. Give it a little stir. All right, well, here it is. I mean, I'm a fan of honey lemon, usually. This is pretty much just honey lemon, right? Cheers, everybody. Ooh, that's kind of strong, but it's very good. Kind of like a hot toddy, I guess. Gonna be enjoying this while I wait for my pie. Then dinner should almost be done. We made it to dinner. My beautiful pie is here. Honestly, when I pulled it out of the oven, I was so excited. It looked so beautiful. The puff pastry just like puffed up so great. And then my little leaves actually became like little biscuits. Even though it is a pie, it's more like, you know, like a chicken pot pie. It can't really retain its shape as much, but you get all this like beautiful flavor. The apple in here has already kind of disintegrated a little bit into the stock. It adds that sweetness to the very sort of like meaty broth, right? This broth, I had a sip of it and oh my gosh, it is so good, which the puff pastry is like slowly soaking up. So I'm very excited to eat it, as I will right now. I mean, in terms of looks, sure, I think this is like not as beautiful as breakfast. I think this is one of those dishes where time really did a lot of justice to it. In terms of the mutton, because mine is not boneless, I'm gonna have to cut up a slice here. We really just seasoned this with like a little bit of salt and pepper, but for some reason, and maybe this is why they specified using mutton, I feel like it just soaks up that sort of seasoning so well. You don't think it works? Like the apple, onion, and mutton, but it totally does. Very, very sort of pleasantly surprised by this, especially because it's mentioned that this dish is supposed to be one of the more plainer ones. They only serve this like within the family or like guests that are very, very close. But if something tasted this good, I would serve it to like everyone. Also have my gin punch here, which punch is apparently how they sort of refer to what we now call cocktails, if you mix things together. It feels good. So yeah, just give me a moment to finish this up and see you for dessert. All right, friends, it is now pretty dark outside. It's pretty late in the day, but I'm back in the kitchen to finish off what I've been prepping for most of the day, actually. So for dessert, I'm actually just gonna go with a trifle. Apparently one of the most popular treats back then in the Victorian era. The most important thing is to make sure that it's as boozy as possible. That's literally what's written in the recipe. So I have some brandy here, I have some sherry here. I'll be making a mini version of the family portion size that's written in the recipe book. So because I've already prepped most of the things today, this is going to be pretty easy, I think. So the first layer, the bottom layer that's going to be in here is this sponge cake that I made earlier. It is a fatless sponge cake, so I basically just whipped up some eggs and sugar, then sifted in flour, gently mixed it, made sure that it was still airy. It is a little denser than I think the usual sponge cake, which is, I think, what you want. So I'm going to now slice it up gently. Oh, also there's like sugar coated around the cake pan. That's why it has like a crunchier crust, which is what we want actually. Just gonna cut it into little pieces like I would a parfait. So this is going in. Going to add in the brandy. Didn't just specify how much. Gonna eyeball it. Whoa, maybe eyeballing is a little dangerous, but I'm gonna let that soak it up. Going to add some of this jam that I bought from the farmer's market. Now to add in my crystallized ginger, or candied fruit essentially. Then I'm going to add a layer of almond biscuits from the Italian grocery store. Gonna add a bit of sherry now. We're supposed to let this set in the fridge for a little bit, but I think we're good to move on. I'm gonna go ahead and add the custard now. All right, so here's the custard that I made earlier. It was basically heavy cream, milk, vanilla, and then mixed it in with some egg yolks, kind of made sure to temper it so that it didn't curdle, and then kind of cooking it on low heat over the stovetop until it thickened. The cool thing is though, at the very end, I added in gelatin as well as some really fine almond flour, which is what the recipe suggested to help really thicken it up. And as you can see, it is truly very thick. Just going to spread this on. I'm putting a bunch because this took a lot of effort. Then I'm going to pipe my cream on there. At the top here, we're gonna decorate that real quick since that is one of the most important steps. If you're serving this at a house especially. They like symmetrical arrangements, so making sure to do that. Also some of that candied ginger from earlier. Once again doing the symmetrical pattern here. And then to finish it off, I have some edible flowers. It has been quite a day today. I feel like once again I got to try a lot of recipes that I wouldn't have because I've never even heard of them. Yeah, but it was really cool kind of being able to get a taste, I guess, of what people used to have in the Victorian era. Even though today technically I was both the maid of the house and the lady of the house since I got to make and eat things. But honestly, I am pretty happy I finally got to do this. I hope I made Mrs. Crocombe proud, and I will see you guys in the next video. A bunch of cleaning up to do. Gonna get boozed up in the meantime. All right, bye.